I'm over to the mat. You can see the cat has already started the class ahead of the game, as usual. We're going to start by sitting. I'm going to have to sit next to the cat. I'm going to see if I can find myself a space. If you've got one of these blocks, by the way, that will be kind of useful. But if you don't, it's totally fine. You can use one of these kind of blocks instead, but turned around that way. Or books. When you're using books, by the way, just in case you haven't got the memo, the binding faces forwards, the book binding. Anyway, Siddhasana if you can. So Siddhasana is legs crossed, heels in front of each other and in front of the pubis. And in Hatha Yoga texts, Siddhasana is the most popular, the most revered of all postures. It's great to see you. Oh no, your tree's nice, Sarah Mead. Nice tree. Okay, let me just check everyone's in place. I'm just doing a last little check, make sure everything's as it should be, technically speaking. Yeah, it is. So as I say, Siddhasana, the most popular pose in Hatha Yoga texts, such as the Shiva Samhita and the Garanda Samhita and the Hatha Pradipika. Heels in line with each other in the middle of the body and the chest up. Breath, if you can, through the nose. Spinal column open, like a lotus stalk, and your head is the lotus flower. And both in Tantric Buddhism, Tantric Shaivism, we have this emphasis on openness in the central channel. And some of you might instinctively and intuitively feel a movement, as if your central channel, which is anterior to your spine, were moving in a body of water, just like a lotus stalk, with your head as the lotus flower. And moving for the purpose of feeling flow, which is not an abstraction, of course. But a here and now absorption beyond grasping, and so it doesn't have any, what's in Sanskrit called samshayad. It doesn't have any doubt associated with it, because it's beyond grasping. You know? We're not struggling, trying, doing. It just kind of is, you know. Bring your hands to the heart while still feeling this open channel, excuse me, like a lotus stalk. And of course, lotus stalks, like many water plants, have a little hollow, which is why, one of the reasons why a lotus is used to represent the central channel, one of the things it's used. And right in the middle of the central channel, the heart chakra, Hridaya means heart. It's in the middle of the central channel, depending, of course, on where you map the central channel, between the top and bottom, front and back. And we're going to place one of the bija mantras that's associated with the heart chakra in this midpoint between upper and lower points of the central channel. And that's very simply the mantra Hung. You'll sometimes see it spelled H-U-N-G, which is about as close as you can get if you don't understand the International Alphabet of Sanskrit transliteration to correct pronunciation. So, Hung. So we're going to chant this 3 times and imagine that the heart chakra area is glowing blue as you chant it. And if you've got other people in your house who are a bit embarrassed and shy, don't worry about it. Don't get used to it. Take a deep breath in for the first. Om. Right in the heart area, blue light, last one. And then a deep breath in, a deep breath out. And I hope that's triggered your breath flow. And now, of course, we stay open to the breath flow. We sort of give in the paramitas, that is the perfections. In Buddhist tradition, generosity is nearly always seen as the most foremost. The Buddha's last life before the life he got incarnated to as what became the Buddha, the awakened one. He was called Vesantara and he practiced many acts of generosity. That's what got him through. Okay, release your hand. And we're just going to change across the legs. So, Siddhasana. Now, not everyone's comfortable in Siddhasana, and I get that. There are many reasons why that might be. So it's okay not to be in Siddhasana, to be in a kneeling position or even a seated position on a chair. But your spine needs to be open, or particularly the central channel. So if you find it useful to visualize a lotus stalk, as in water, so water tends to have a little bit of movement to it usually. And so the lotus stalk might also, but the purpose of the movement is absorption. Absorption. Now again, absorption is not something you or I do. That in a way would be an oxymoron. Absorption instead is in a sense the disappearance of you and I. The self-construct that 9 times out of 10 isn't useful. There is the 1 in 10 where the self-construct is necessary to talk about the future, to arrange your holidays, that sort of thing. Bring your hands to the heart again, and again give them a little rub. Perhaps you can feel there's a sort of natural sahaja, natural energy, relaxed, uncontrived, just normal, in a really sort of uncontrived, natural way. Hands come to the heart when you're ready. They can move any other way. Some people naturally move back and forth, or side to side, or not at all is also fine. It's all about energy flow, that's all. Whatever serves that, that's what you follow. Again, we're going to chant Hum 3 times. So if you already felt embarrassed the first 3 times, you've got to cope with 3 more. And so if your family, if they're around, they'll be fine with it. This is called Nyasa, the practice of Nyasa, or placement. So 3 rounds of Hum, bring in the new year. Visualize as blue light. Take a deep breath in. Two more. Last one. And then deep breaths, plural. So they normally just come naturally, don't they, the breaths? Which is as it should be, it's right. You don't need a breather. You don't need someone who's doing the breathing. So letting it happen, giving. We come back to this quality, this essential quality of dana. Well, Buddhism, and actually if you think about many other religious traditions, also value very, very highly indeed dana. Okay, releasing your hands. And we're going to fold our legs into a simple kneeling position Vajrasana. So that's pretty straightforward. It's kneeling, but you might have problems with the knees, in which case put something between the heels and buttocks. And we're resting one hand on top of the other in Dhyana Mudra, Dhyani Mudra. It also has other names, Bhairavi, Bhairava, Mudra. And again, movement, if that movement is natural, sahaja. Now, you don't need to bring thinking into whether or not it's natural, like asking, is this natural? I don't know. You know, thinking doesn't know. In a sense, it's natural when you just trust it inherently, the movement. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to think, does it fit in? Is it allowed? None of that comes into it. But one thing does come into it, and that's, is it causing the breath to flow? And if it is, normally, there's no sort of contrived thought going on. So it's very much an act of powerful generosity here and now. Breath centered, so your breath opens up, you feel more and more absorption. Of course, on a more mundane level, we are massaging the anterior tibialis, the gastrocnemius, the soleus, the various hamstrings, the quadriceps, the gluteal muscles, and so on, right up through the back and even to the neck. And this massage has the effect of causing what we might call anatomical flow, as well as the general feeling of flow that we're, of course, prioritizing as yogins. So we're going to interlace our fingers next and stretch our arms diagonally away. You'll feel your tricep muscles. Feel them in an uncontrived way, like natural mornings, new year. Keep the mind new, you know, raising up the arms when you're ready. And making sure flow is our priority. So Buddhists focus very much on what they call santana in Sanskrit, which means flow or a continuum. And the purpose of flow is to draw you in. We sometimes use the word pratyahara, which is a highly sustaining experience, because pratyahara comes from prati plus ahara, turning away, as it were, from external sustenance, you know, in various ways, validation, various kinds, sustenance of various kinds, and turning into internal sustenance. Big white circle with your arms now, hands to the heart, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 for 60 breaths. Perhaps you're still moving. It's not incumbent on you to move, but it might be helpful. And then release the hands nice and easy. We're bringing ourselves up to a standing position next. So bringing yourself up to a standing position for Tadasana. Now, some of you might be worried, might be thinking, well, Jim, where are your fantastic yoga shorts that you normally wear? I'm missing them already. This is a new thing for the new year. No, it's just a bit cold in the kitchen at the moment. It's okay. Now, feet together, if you can. Sometimes it's not anatomically possible to bring the feet together, so have them apart. But if they're apart, make sure they're level. Feel into your feet. The purpose is yoga, and yoga is another word for absorption. Absorption of what into what? Of the abstract itself into this holistic flow of moment to moment continuum, arising and passing, which negates clinging. Clinging is another way of describing attaching a sense of me, myself, and I to anything at all, to the body, to the breath, to anything at all. Right? Now raise your arms up, Urdhva Hasta, that means hands up, suck in your tummy and move in any way that draws you into this middle, this center, this heart, which is not abstracted, not an idea, but a feeling of gathering. So your movements are all serving this feeling of gathering. Okay, big, wide circle back down, hands to the heart center. Now you've got two choices, that's jump or step, up to you. So it's perfectly valid to step your feet apart this time of the day. Left toes in, right foot and leg out. Here's the thing, turn on the ball of the right foot first until the heel is lined up with the arch, and then the last little bit of the turn is done on the heel. Light tone in the tummy, find the pelvic floor. Okay, now if you're really honest, and I know you to be honest, this is one of the reasons we all like each other so much, is that honesty and no-nonsense honesty that we all share as a value. If you're really honest, tuning in the pelvic floor is a fascinating, meditative experience. While still doing that, raise up your lead arm, inhale, exhale, come down to Utthita Trikonasana, that is extended triangle. Now your hand can be on your shin or on a block behind the leg. Top arm is going to raise up if that's possible for you. And deep breaths. If it's not possible for you, you can have your top arm down or on your hip. That's fine. Breath is everything because you're a yogin. So surrender yourself. Breathing deep, surrender yourself to whatever evokes bliss. Coming back to Jason's, like it's still resonating around my head, you know, when I mentioned, why are we doing this? And Jason replied, bliss, ananda. And that's exactly right. Because it's blissful to be in the center because it needs nothing. It has everything it needs. Inhale, come on up. Well done. Feet face forwards, hands on your hips. Draw in some deep breaths. Draw in some deep breaths. Find the pelvic floor, right? So for me, that's the thing, you know, it's quite a thing, finding the pelvic floor. It's not complicated or even hard, but there is a challenge to it, to find the pelvic floor. I could, of course, ignore the instruction, as could you. You could alternatively daydream, think about something else. But I think it's worth tuning in on what is required and tuning out on what is not required to find the pelvic floor. So this is the area of muscles between the pubic bone and the tailbone, hammocked with 4 principal muscles. And of course, they're jam-packed full of nerve endings. So it's not hard to feel into it, it's just a degree of honesty. So I move often, my pelvis, it helps me tune out of distraction. Okay, so that project's an ongoing project for most of the poses. Turn your back toes in, front foot and leg out. Remember, the majority of the turn is on the ball of the foot, and the last little bit is on the heel. That should give you the correct alignment heel to arch. Raise your arms. Raise your lead arm. Lightly tone your tummy. The lightly toning has, I hope, this sort of almost poetic understanding for you. Light tone. There's a sort of repetition. There's a lightness. There's no grasping. It's very meditative. Inhale, exhale, come down. So those 2 instructions are ongoing. Light tone in the tummy. Find the pelvic floor. And of course, the whole class has been prioritized with our priority of the breath and our overarching descriptive word for the goal of yoga, bliss, ananda, in Sanskrit, ananda. So bliss is not, you know, you on a particularly cheerful day, you know, complimented, hair looking good, you know. That doesn't tend to actually be bliss because, as the Buddha put it, there's always a little bit of dukkha, even in that kind of sukha, and a little bit of, You know, when something is going really, really well, there's always a little part of us that's like, oh, you cling, you know. So that's a bit of dukkha. But in this bliss, which is based on breathing now and moving now, this isn't contrived, this isn't grasped, this isn't vulnerable. This is meditation. So your breath should indicate that. Inhale, come up. Well done. Feet forwards, hands to hips, breathing easy. Now we are going to forward fold again, so I'd like your toes to be turned very slightly in towards each other. And some of you might find it useful to have a block or a chair to bring your hands onto. So turn your toes in towards each other and also add to that, extending the little toes. So just like finding the pelvic floor, extending the little toes is a challenge that we're not actually that worried about completing, right? Because most of our little toes are sort of seem a bit alien to us. But the repetition and the priority of waking up to that level of sensitivity, that's why we extend the little toe. It's not an end in itself, although there are anatomical benefits, which I could list if we had longer. Email me if you want to know the benefits. I'd be happy to discuss them. But the main benefit that we're looking at is absorption into the powerful dance of now. And we're going to lift up the inner groins on an inhalation. So inhale, inner groins up, exhale, fold over the top of your front thighs, hinge from your hip joints, hands to the floor or blocks or chair. And in one or two cases, if the pelvis just keeps moving, if your hamstrings are of a certain length, fine, don't restrict yourself. But for most people, keeping the chest parallel this time of the day is much more beneficial than coming lower. Why is it more beneficial? Because you can keep the anterior spine open, the central channel, you can feel into that. And that central channel, which has areas like the heart chakra that you can particularly center on, or the upper and lower end of the central channel, you can also focus on, or all 3 points, lower, upper, and middle. Coming into the central channel is coming into this self-sustaining. It has everything it needs. So we sometimes in this school of yoga call it listening, responding. You know, what being in bliss is listening, responding beyond a sense of me, myself, and I, you see. So that hopefully you're moving in ways that are opening up your breath. You can reiterate adjustments of the feet. It has benefits to areas like the common peroneal nerve along the outer leg. Has benefits to the medial meniscus. You know, we can talk about it's quite easy, you know, it's the first thing you learn when you're a yoga teacher, the first sort of 15, 20 years of teaching, you're all over, you know, anatomy and why and all the rest. But after that, you realize, of course, that the overarching principle covers everything, including anatomy, including respiration, including nerve condition. Okay, now we're going to bring ourselves back to the parallel to the floor if you came lower. And if you are at the parallel to the floor position, come to your fingertips, walk your feet in a little bit closer to each other, come to the highest point you can possibly come to on your fingertips on your block if you're using a block, and then ascend without too much rush. Well done. And then walk your feet towards each other. We're coming into Adho Mukha Svanasana, that is to say downward facing dog. I have a downward laying cat behind me. It just looks like a black blob, but it is actually a cat. We're going into the downward facing dog and really pressing and reiterating the palms into the floor like a cat pads its paws, usually into your favorite trousers or your furniture. The purpose, I think, I'm pretty sure about this actually, of a cat padding its paws. It's a sort of arrival ritual. Do the same with your paws. Arrive by padding your paws so you feel that you tune out of other stories, distractions. So repetition is a very important part of yoga. The heels can stretch back. We're not concerned one jot whether they come down or not. The truth is, for some people, it doesn't matter how much you've opened up your hamstrings and your calf muscles and your psoas. The heels won't come down because of the shape of the bones, and the position of the bones, the talus being a little higher up for some people. So don't worry about the heels coming to the floor, but they can certainly stretch backwards, and that might bring them closer to the floor, but it's not the goal. The goal is to stretch and open and play and to live. So breathe deep, feel your pause, reiterate them if you find it causes more focus, more arrival. Focus is like arriving. Okay, well done. Come down to hands and knees. And then take a breath or two. Perhaps you'll wag your tail loosely. It's really not something we need to dictate. We just give ourselves. We breathe freely, we give ourselves to a sense of flow in the present. To a sense of flow in the present. Now, within this context of flow in the present, so maybe the pelvis is still moving, mind feels like it wants to, but it doesn't have to. We're going to lightly tone the tummy, which means there's a sense in which it draws up and stretches, draws up, as it were, towards the spine and stretches, as it were, towards the chin, towards the chest. With this light tone in the tummy, really want to emphasize this word light, the Sanskrit word lagu. Light. Light tone. So it has a certain lightness, like a person who has a certain lightness to them. Like someone like the Dalai Lama, have you ever seen him talking? He's got a certain lightness to him. Now from here, with this light tone in the tummy, with your toes either tucked under or not, whatever feels more comfy for your knees, we're going to extend one leg back. So I hope you've got a bit of space behind you, but just adjust if you need to, because we're also going to extend the opposite arm forwards. And we're going to look at connecting to lightness, lagu, by allowing a sense of bobbing. So the leg can move up, down, medial, lateral, so can the arm. We're not contriving it, we're allowing it. You see the difference, not contriving it. We're allowing it, we're not containing anything anymore, limiting, we're just seeing where this whole thing wants to flow. Bobbing around like a compass needle, the arm and the leg. It's quite intuitive in some people to really find intimacy with the inner groin area of the raised leg as a meditation. Okay, coming back to hands and knees. Again, a little movement might be in order of the kinds I've suggested, but also other kinds of movement. You know, wagging the tail, so on. Breath is your priority. When you're ready, same thing, the leg and the opposite arm. And then breath. That's your guide, actually. So if your breath becomes more absorbing to you than my voice, great. You know, if you disregard, you know, you can't even really hear me speaking because you're so absorbed in the breath will tell you more than I ever could. So bobbing, swaying. The breath is your teacher. The thinking mind doesn't know. The Sanskrit word jnana is cognate with our English word gno, cano, gnya, they're cognate. Okay, well done. Back to hands and knees. Again, shake it out a little bit. Now advance your knees towards your hands and turn your hands the other way around so the heel of the hand faces away. Feel the stretch all the way around the circumference of the wrists. And most importantly, breathe into that stretch. So don't just feel it, but breathe into it. And again, there may be intuitive ranging around. Left or right, forwards or backwards. And as the absorption takes over, the breath opens up. And a powerful, selfless knowing arises that in its turn gives a powerful feeling of ananda, bliss. Because it's blissful to feel that all this self-creation, got to be like this, got to be like that, not only isn't required, but most activities work better without it. Okay, now we're going to tuck our toes under and slowly peel the hands out of that stretch, which might be a bit of a monster stretch for you. One hand on top of the other, sitting up tall, toes are tucked under, another potentially monstrous stretch, but that doesn't mean it's not good for you. So toes tucked under, the high heel sitting. Now, obviously, there are some circumstances under which you can't do this if you've got metal plates in the feet, obviously. So that's fine. And I also understand that for many of us, it's really quite a tough stretch. So just a couple more breaths, please. And we will then move on. So we're going to then release our hands and we're going to come to sitting in, for me, the most powerful seated pose of all, Dandasana. So in Dandasana, extend the legs out in front of you, draw the buttock push out and back. It's also advantageous for many people to sit on a block for Dandasana. So that would be a flat block, like this kind of block. And if you happen to have two, then you'd place them like that, short end to short end, at the end of your mat for you to sit on, right? I'm not going to use a block, and you don't have to, but here's the advice. Once you've drawn the buttock push out and back, right? Once you've drawn the buttock push out and back a few times, and you've dragged your hands back next to your hips, if the lower back is bulging out, not drawing in, if the hip points are further back rather than slightly further forwards than the sitting bone, then grab yourself a block and sit on that and then draw the buttock push out again. So do that now if you need to, because without the hip points being that little bit further forwards than the sitting bones, the pose won't work. Huh? The powerful effect that it can offer won't work. Either way, legs are close. Feet may or may not be together, depends on the dimensions of your body, doesn't matter. Hands are drawn back by the hips. And depending on your arm length, you might have, as I have, straight arms, if your arms aren't particularly long relative to your torso. You might be on your fingertips if your arms are a little shorter. Or you might be bending your elbows and pointing them back. But lift up your spine. Come on, lift up. Look for lightness. So range around, forwards, backwards, left, right, looking for opportune positions that provide a moment of lift, an upshot. the yogin wants to link these upshots that they create, that she or he creates. So they come in closer and closer succession. And it may come to pass that they even become a continuous flow of upward energy through the central channel, which is an experience that we describe as Kundalini. And once it happens, the body just stays open, and then it becomes a loop, like a feedback loop of Kundalini. So this is a pose I do recommend we spend time in, but we're going to come out of it now. And maybe some of you got the beginnings of those powerful waves of Kundalini. Kundalini, of course, is the name of a goddess. We're going to lay down on the backs. So as soon as you're ready, laying down on your back, placing your hands underneath your head with your fingers interlaced. The jaw is soft. The throat is soft. The tongue is soft. Now, the lower back is an interesting area that grips and expresses biases in the energy body. So it's a great opportunity, laying on our backs here, to feel those biases. One side of the lower back tends to lift, one side of the lower back tends to shorten. And really the process of correction expresses itself out of full acceptance. So you've got to allow the body to arise as it is, in consciousness. And only then would it start to express realignments. Only when you fully allow it to arise as it is. Now keep the lower back close to the floor, raise up the legs, so you're flexing the hips. That will bring the lower back closer to the floor. And we'll highlight biases. Your breath is still your guru. Lift up your head as well, and you'll feel the abdominal muscles are involved in that, including the deep abdominal wall, fibers of the psoas. And hold this a few breaths. Now from here, extend one leg to about 45 degrees, keep the lower back intimate with the floor, and then contract it and repeat in the other leg. This is both for the psoas, the top of the inner thigh, but also the abdominals. And one more time each side. Breathe into it, let it still be meditation. Intimacy is an interesting word. Lower back intimate with the floor. Last time, last side. Really great stretch for the psoas. And then contract, head down first, feet down second. Then everyone takes a deep breath, in and out. Hopefully where one deep breath comes, another follows. And where two have come and gone, a third will happen, and so on. Give yourself for a few breaths now to the breath. Start to notice areas that are holding back and see if you can begin to give those to the breath. The interesting thing about a lot of tension is it's founded on uncertainty or doubt. You can start to notice that in your life. A lot of tension is founded on uncertainty and doubt. Now here's the really interesting thing. If you release doubt, just as a sort of general experience, all the tension goes, but also knowledge arises. It's doubt that's blocking knowledge. Ironically, we have doubt because we don't know. We don't know because we have doubt. Right? So you have to give is the antidote. Now bring your feet close to your bum, close as you can. So I like to lift and land, almost sort of walk them. And you can incorporate a little massagey meditation in that. And when you've moved as many times as you want to move and repeat it if you want to, tone your tummy in a wave. So the Sanskrit word for a wave is urmi. So the tummy is in a wave, it draws in and up. So the chest will open. That should make your lower back feel more supported. On an exhalation, we're going to lift our pelvises off the floor. Now, once your pelvis is lifted, it can drift left, right, up, down. It can sway, it can tilt, it can bounce. The purpose is, as ever, meditation. And meditation is absorption of this abstracted separate self into the flow of moments or dhammas rising and passing, flow of dhammas. Dhammas is a word that expresses this early Buddhist idea that there are little particles of reality arising and ceasing. And later Buddhism even negates that and says all dhammas are empty as well. Okay, coming down, slow and easy, drifting down, even to the floor, landing and breathing. Let's allow ourselves some deep breaths. And then lifting up the head, you'll feel the abdominals. Lifting up the feet, you'll feel the intimacy of the floor and the lower back. Let it be a meditation. Extend one leg out to about 45 degrees. It could bob, it could rise and drop. Whatever feels useful, it could shake, it could do anything. And then contract and extend the other. Again, move if movement helps your sense of flow rather than gripping. We're flowing. Contract, head down, feet down, hands out from under the head, arms out to the sides of you. Fully extend your arms out so that your elbows are a little higher than your shoulders. And then just breathe into that. Yogis are looking for subtle experiences to merge with. And the body is just that, the arising and passing of the continuum of the way things are, the santana of the dhammas, using these Buddhist terms, but they're taken on generally by the whole tantric tradition later. This arising and flowing is a real experience that you can open up to. Feel it on your chest, you can feel it through your arms. Okay, bring your arms back towards each other and roll over onto your side. Once on your side, bend the leg that you're laying on, right? Bend that leg that you're laying on. So the angle at the back of the knee is more or less 90 degrees between the calf and the thigh. And also between your thigh and your tummy, there's another 90 degrees. So 90 degrees between the calf and the thigh, between the thigh and the tummy, more or less. And then focus on the inner thigh, the top of the inner thigh. So the insertion of the psoas, extend there, and take the leg up and back until you feel space. You can really tangize space, which takes a degree of honesty. And it takes whatever time it takes, you know. So what we want to do is tangize that sense of space in the groin and bring it down with us as we bring the foot back to the floor. For me, maybe for you too, I have to reiterate, as my leg goes down, I have to reclaim the space by lifting it up again. And I might do that several times until eventually the foot does land with that sense of space in the groin. Suck in your tummy, draw it in and forwards, light tone. Press down, lift and turn your chest towards the floor and bring yourself down then to your elbows, forearms and wrists. Breathe easy. If your sacrum is a little tight, feel free to let your back knee bend. Then also feel free to have your back leg actually supported up on blocks or on a bolster. That's quite useful if you've got any problems with the sacroiliac joint. Keeping a sense of ease around that joint is really important. So not letting it tense up, breathing into the area. Top leg on top of the bottom leg, curl up from the side, just push real gently. Great, and then down you go again to the other side. So I just swap which end my feet and head are at, so I can still face the screen. You might want to do the same. Bending again the leg you're laying on, extending the inner groin of the other leg, right? Which is a meditation. So it lifts and draws back. And for me, everything that the sort of space between my conscious mind and the subconscious mind is not vast, and they interplay. And I think that's true for a lot of people. So visual correlates come up, like I might find myself imagining light in the inner groin area. This is quite spontaneous. Or whatever arises to intimate to you space, you might just notice what's arising. Eventually the foot's coming down with that space in the groin. I'm going to suck that tummy in, push and turn. And again, elbows, forearms and wrists. Again, we want to make sure the SI joint, sacroiliac joint, and the sacrum is above your tailbone and below your lower back. We want to make sure that area feels lovely and soft, really passive. So if it helps you to bend your top leg knee, or if it helps you to have your foot raised on some blocks or a bolster. But think soft. Think ease. And yes, bliss is a sign that you're practicing in the right way. Because bliss is an expression of the realization that what we need, we have. Totally without any further requirement at all. Okay, top leg on top of the bottom leg, curl up from the side. And we're coming to sit in Sukhasana. Here there's a gap between the legs and the pelvis. It's a crossed-legged position. You can sit on a flat block. If you sit on two, which is very useful actually, if your back is a little compressed, then sit on two flat blocks, one on top of the other. Then it's advisable to use a blanket, in the way I'll briefly demonstrate. I'm not sat on blocks, so I won't use a blanket. But if you're on two blocks, which is very useful, you take a blanket like that, you lift your knees up, and that blanket goes underneath the shins. The reason why sitting on two blocks is very useful, and that's not just for You know, that's for anyone, to be honest, but particularly if you feel it's hard to get lightness in the lower back, is because we want this space in the central channel. So quick reiteration, gap between the legs and the pelvis. Sitting on 1, 2 blocks, it's fine to sit on none, but most people will get more out of this pose if they sit on a block or 2. And then, if you're on 2, use the blanket under the shins. And then meditative movement. Some people are a little stiff in the knees, so moving in this pose can help ease out some of the tissue so that the knees can find balance. And that tissue doesn't just mean muscle and ligament and tendon, but even the meniscal tissue between the upper and lower leg bones, you know, can be manipulated and moved through meditation, in other words, absorption, into optimally healthy position. So, meditate and move for the purpose of absorption. Now, if you are sitting on a block or 2 blocks, as we turn in a moment, we might need to be on your fingertips. You might even need to recruit a book or a block to go on the floor behind you, but we're going to raise up from our inner groins on an inhalation. So do that now. Inhale. Exhale, right hand on the floor behind you, left hand crosses over both legs, and you turn. Don't try and keep the pelvis static. Don't even worry about what the pelvis is doing. It does what it needs to do. Your job instead is to feel your spine between your sitting bones, which requires a kind of subtle tuning in. Keep the jaw passive. Great job. Return to center and keep lifting and turning the other way, all the way around. Jaw soft. Breathing deep. Tuning in, tuning in. Tuning in is a supersensual experience. Of the supersensual now that you surrender to, you give to. And this now, and it doesn't matter if you're looking at the Buddhist tradition or the Samkhya tradition, which influenced the Buddhist tradition, or other traditions, this now is liberative. Because it's a flow. And flow negates clinging. So you can't negate clinging by deciding to negate it. You have to see things the way they are for clinging to release. Okay, return again to center, palms up, deep breaths. The mind stays unadulterated, new. The new year, so I'm going to try and keep this theme going for as many classes, hopefully all the way through until this time next year. Newness. Okay. Change the cross of the legs. Draw the buttock flesh out and back. Don't forget, if you're using a blanket, to place it again underneath the shins. That's not useful, by the way, if you're sitting with no blocks. It might be useful with 1, and it's essential with 2. Palms up, Jnana Mudra. If you touch your index finger and thumb tip together with your palms up, there's a sense both of focus and of receptivity. Jnana. Breathe through the nose. we're going to chant a bija mantra, a seed syllable mantra that's associated with the gift of this sense of separate self being removed instantaneously. So there's nothing between us and dance, us and painting, us and nature, us and the body, you know, us and the moving clouds. You know? So the mantra is Kleem, spelled K-L-I with a straight line across the top, M with a dot underneath it, Kleem. And we're going to bring our hands together to chant this. Make it long, make it strong, end as nasally as you can. Deep breath in. Clean. Deep breaths after that. Just experience for a moment the powerful selflessness. We sometimes describe it as emptiness. Emphasis. This starts with the Pali Canon in the Buddhist tradition and is super developed by Nagarjuna in the year 150 Common Era, more or less. And then adopted across all Mahayana Buddhism and becomes the central teaching of Tibetan philosophy. And even migrates into Tantric Shaivism in the form, of course, predominantly of Kali, whose Bija Mantra we just chanted. Releasing your hands, we got 1 beautiful minute to lay on our backs. So, laying on your back, make yourself comfortable as you can. Because this is a class that I always make sure I finish exactly on time, because although it's lockdown, we still have commitments, I'm sure. Yeah, shoulder blades scooted under the body, so the chest has a buoyancy. Make sure the neck has a bit of length. Now, of course, you might have time to lay longer, and why not? You know, experience the bliss of absorption in the continuum, the flow. But if you're ready and want to move, then allow your toes a little movement, the ankles, fingers and wrists, just sort of feeling into the body as if it were new. When you feel ready, if you feel ready, bend your legs, place the feet onto the floor. Roll onto your left side first and lay as comfortably as you can there. And then onto your right. When you feel ready, you might rub your eyes, run a hand through your hair, stretch out an arm or a leg, that kind of thing. And you can bring yourself up in your own time from your side. Om. Om, by the way, is the Sanskrit word for yes. Om. What a joy